Coming to you live from my apartment. It's Rob Has a Podcast. And now here's the guy who often says to himself, my enemies are potting. I'm Rob Cesternino. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So excited to be here on a Thursday for a great episode. You're in the right place because we have a fantastic guest here with us. I just saw him in Boston, and I'm excited to get the chance to catch up a little bit here with you. It's Kaleb. Kaleb, how are you?
What's going on, Rob? You know, Boston, we had so much fun we have to do it again, right?
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily in Boston, but wherever. So I'm excited to have you here. We haven't really ever gotten to do a podcast like this before. And so I'm thrilled to get the chance to do it.
Yeah. Me too.
We did the after show, but I feel that's a different animal. That's like, oh, like bang, 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 bang. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Takes.
Yeah. I actually, it's funny. I don't know if I'm, you watch all these sports podcasts. I'm watching Stephen A., Shannon Sharp, all these guys. You're like, I could be in there. Like, how hard could that be? And, a lot of respect for the know-it-alls, and everyone who's done the after show thing. But this is going to be fun. Let's do it, chill out a little bit and just.
This is more your vibe, I feel.
Oh, I appreciate that. People talk about wanting to get to the end, but you might as well enjoy the journey. That's where I'm at.
We're enjoying the journey, and we're gonna have a lot of fun here today. Of course, great exit interview today with Star. Got the chance to catch up with Star. Very fun one. Be sure to check that one out. Also, we have the Wand-Off coming up this week. You ever listen to the Wand-Off, Kaleb?
You know what? Not recently, but I did listen to some of them. Yeah.
In the past, but you know it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on,
yes. All right. Wand-Off coming up on Monday, part of Club Condo. Get your Wand-Offs in robbinswebsite.com/Wand-Off. And just one other thing for listeners, as you're listening to me and Kaleb talk about everything that's going on, we've got a survey that we posted. I want to know from the listeners, what do you want RHAP to be focused on? What's working? What's maybe not working as much? Let us know. Go to robbinswebsite.com/spring survey when you have a couple of minutes. I really appreciate it. Help us figure out what we should be doing for you. All right. But Kaleb, for you, how's everything going?
Everything is great over here. Although I did have some tough news last week that I thought might be fun for the pod.
Sure.
I don't know if you heard.
Hope everything's okay.
Yeah. So last week, officially, Fire 2, the music festival.
Yes. I heard about yes. I talked about this on News AF this week with Tyson.
Oh, okay. Not on this podcast?
Not on. I mean, it's all on this podcast, but yeah, sure.
So I had a ticket since October of last year.
Oh. Now, what was it about the Fire Festival? Because the first one was famously such a disaster that made you want to go back out. So
it started with a girlfriend of mine was in New York and actually grabbed drinks with Billy McFarland.
Yeah.
And talking with him, I guess, sounded very funny, charming, and smart. And she was like, Caleb, the biggest thing that jumped out to me is that he comes across really humbled after all the mistakes he's made, right?
Yeah.
And he's doing this thing, Fire 2, and I think we should go to it. Maybe she just picked me because I'll do something just for the plot. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I was like, this guy, like, it's almost like the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. You know what I mean? It's like, he scammed a lot of people, but at the end of the day, if you're teaching like 19-year-olds how to steal from the 1%, you're like a savant in some areas. You know what I mean? Like, there is a lot of method to the madness. And I was just thinking to myself, if Billy's going to use his powers for good, I could be on the first cutting edge of something that, everyone's going to be talking about for as long as we live. So I thought, risk it. 1 in 6 shot, let's give it a try.
Yeah, that was your shot in the dark to go to Fire Festival 2. And then they announced, that they were not going to have it. They also announced that they're going to sell the company. Have you thought about taking over the Fire Festival?
I didn't know that. If I maybe would co-sponsor it. Maybe I can call Sia or somebody, maybe Rob Has a Podcast can grab it.
Maybe you could get like a pool of investors together.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I think why, like, that's, having one person be the face, I don't know if it works so well the first time, but if it was a conglomerate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I feel like that Survivor kind of does have the fire branding. Like maybe you could buy Fire Festival and turn it into like the world's biggest Survivor convention.
Didn't Bob Crowley have like the biggest Survivor kind of event? Like, should we get him back?
You could top that, right?
I wasn't there, but
with the Fire Festival branding behind you, Bob Crowley is gonna be like, "Oh my God, Kaleb is destroying me."
Yeah, it will sound off. Let us know if this is something that we should look into.
You're gonna be like the Death Star to Bob Crowley's whatever he's doing.
Before we start a bidding war, how much are we talking about? Where is it?
I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. Okay, well,
you're the salesperson. Yeah, that you got to go in there and negotiate with Billy McFarland.
Okay,
you already have the connection.
I'll talk to my girl and see, see what happens. But I will say, for Billy's sake, that outside of the fact that it sounds like those extenuating circumstances, that he lost a lot of credibility the first time. It was hard to get the second one set up.
Yeah,
I will say, money promptly refunded. So,
okay, all right, good. And I'm telling you what, because like that, look, we get with the Fire Festival with all the survivors there, that when we feed them like that, like a pathetic cheese sandwich compared to what we got on Survivor, they're going to be like, wow, this is a feast. I feel like I'm on the sanctuary. Let me do the chicken and waffles chant.
Yeah. What people don't like, what they like, you go to Fire this time. And it's like, well, you know what? Like, what's 3 more days or 7 more days? We'll abstain,
Come on out, everybody. Remember, fire represents your life.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe, we could, like, people could get people to, like, how fast can they make fire? The Fire Festival is going to be huge when we take it over.
Now this is starting to sound like a beach drop,
Yeah.
Like,
it's the world's biggest beach drop.
Yeah,
Come out to the Fire Festival with Kaleb.
Yeah.
Star's going to perform. Sifu's going to perform. Like, we'll get all the musical acts. Yeah.
J. Maya. Actually, I don't know if we could book J. Maya, but that would be a good get,
This is great. Okay.
Price. Yeah.
All right. Look, we got this all figured out, but let's talk about Survivor 48. Now, Kaleb, last night I came in, speaking of fire, I came in a little hot on the know-it-alls. And I would say that I do not have a ton of remorse this morning. Sometimes I come in a little overly hot, and then I have a little bit of like regret in the morning. You've never had that before, where the next morning you wake up and you're like, should I have done that?
That is almost, there's too many Sundays to count.
Okay.
I don't always feel it on Saturday, but by Sunday I get hit with the scaries pretty hard. So yeah.
Well, first, let me just ask you your reaction to last night's episode. And then I'll tell you where I have maybe a little bit, maybe one thing I would have taken back from yesterday.
So, to be fair, obviously, like, the last few seasons have just been going like better and better and better as the time has gone on.
A real hot streak.
And 48 couldn't have started hotter. I think that was one of the best pre-merges I think we've had as far as I can remember. And maybe it's because I'm a big Say fan. But anyways, what I will say about this season and how I feel about Joe and Eva, and I was going to start with a basketball metaphor here, is that I almost feel like this is like, they're like the San Antonio Spurs of Survivor right now. The Spurs, 15 years, for anyone who doesn't know, with Tim Duncan, they're winning 70% of their games. They win 5 championships. Tim Duncan is the best power forward of all time. But people thought it was so boring because it was just so methodical and it was so clean, And I almost wonder if that's kind of like an overlap with Survivor 48. Like, this is pure dominance that we haven't seen. And if this continues, this is, the strongest thing since the Reba 4, right?
Yeah. I was thinking about the Reba 4 and then also what we have here in this alliance, because I feel like that during your season, I don't feel like that there was people like, oh my God, Reba 4, so boring. This is like, is anybody going to do anything? Maybe there was a little bit of that, but I don't feel like that there was a ton of that, because I think that we were getting like a lot of like the politicking between the people in the Reba 4 for positioning in terms of like who was going to outflank who. And so, yes, that was a tribal alliance that was dominating. But this, to me, feels different, because I feel like that on top of like they're having the numbers, there's also like morality layered over it. And it's also, there's not any politicking between the people in the 4 for who's in the best position in the 4.
Yeah. I had a thought actually, which made me laugh, which was like, what's more infuriating to watch, or like, more almost hypocritical, right? Starting an integrity alliance where you know that eventually you're going to have to backstab and lie to each other in Survivor, or, being like the outcast alliance that has all the members, like in 47, right? Like, what do you think, like, gets people off more? But I do know it definitely feels like, they're moving in this way where, they're not necessarily, Shauhin is probably, and Kyle are like the only ones who are, and that's a dream spot to be in, to the people who are open to playing both sides inside of the integrity group.
Yes. And here is going back to the thing that I felt like I was a little hard on, of that I said that there were 3 people I was frustrated with last night. I was most frustrated with Mitch, and then the 2 people you mentioned, Kyle and Shauhin, were the other 2 people that I had some frustration with, because it feels like to me that from what I'm seeing, Kyle and Shauhin feel almost content to go to the 4 with Joe and Eva. And I feel like that a 4 in which Joe will win. They seem content to want to do that. And they feel like, okay, well, we can't turn on Joe and Eva. Not like I wish I could, but I actually, there's not a way to do it. They seem like that they are morally conflicted about doing that. And I think I would probably walk back a little bit of like that I was maybe too hard on Kyle in the episode, in that Kyle seemed to like try to leave the door open for Kamilla. I wish that he took less of a half measure and then really tried to set up Kamilla for success. But at least he did something for her where that I think it was a little bit of a half measure, but I think I would say I would walk back some of my criticism of Kyle from last night.
Yeah, if we start with Kyle, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like if I'm Kyle, I don't want to get rid of Joe and Eva yet, just because people talk about. And
yet I can live with. Yet I can live with. But I'm concerned that he doesn't want to get rid of them at all.
Well, that's a different question. But like I look at Kyle, and it's like he's in this weird spot because he has Kamilla, who is such a great alliance, as a secret alliance, but at the same time, if he's she's been taking a lot of kind of concessions for his game, allowing him to be in the majority group and do all these things, right? You can't just continue to tell your number one no all the time, right? So while he was like, I can't endorse it, what's the least amount that I can give you to show that I do believe in you and that you are my number one? But why would I want Joe gone and then to potentially be the tallest flower to get chopped next?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I kind of feel like with Kyle and Kamilla, and tell me if this is, say, Rob, this is off base, deleted from the podcast, okay? I'm starting to feel like that maybe, like, is Kyle and Kamilla sort of like a little bit of like toxic relationship where that, that in this hypothetical world, okay? So it's almost like that Kamilla is Kyle's like side relationship, but he's like very much married to his other alliance. And maybe that there was some like, hey, I'm going to like, this is actually the thing. This is actually the thing. And it's almost like that Kyle is like getting cold feet in that, where maybe there was maybe a promise of like, hey, one day I'm going to leave this alliance I'm married to. And you and we're going to be together. But it seems like a little bit more now. It's like, okay, well, Kamilla, I'll just see you on the weekend. Okay, let me see if I can squeeze you in.
Friday, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm going to, here, I'll text you a DoorDash card. You go eat without me. I'll do something for you. But you're not getting, like, my main attention.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think that it's tough, and it's hard to carry on the metaphor because I don't know if I can relate, but if I was to, I would say that Kamilla's sitting there, and it's like, let's say 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 of those side relationships do turn into their next relationship. So she's kind of like, is he actually with me or not?
Yeah. And because sometimes he's like saying like the sweet nothings, but I'm starting to wonder if we're getting into territory of like, girl, he's just not that into you.
The nice part for Kyle, at least at this point, is that, you know, what are Camilla's other options?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you know, Kamilla, you know, in this girlfriend metaphor, maybe she lives in the woods. Like, who else is she dating at this point?
She lives in the woods.
Yeah, like I mean, who's she gonna work with? Mitch and Star, who can't each other, and then
she tried. Yeah, she's out there. She's going out. She's like, well, maybe I'll meet somebody else.
Knocking on doors, you know what I mean? But as long as that's the only thing in her life, you know, that she's gonna continue to come back. And I do think I don't think that this is actually true. You know, I think that Kyle, you know, is like just trying to take out some of the numbers so that he can time his flip. The tough part is, and it's the same thing with Mitch, is that, you know, in Survivor, it's hard to know how, especially your first time playing, like when to make the move. And in Survivor, typically you'd rather shoot sooner than later, right? Because if you wait until the perfect time, everyone can anticipate that perfect time has come and can
right. And I think that this week would have been the time that maybe nobody sees it coming. It doesn't mean it can't happen at 7, but now there's all sorts of things that could go wrong where, let's say, you know, Kyle wants to, you know, make this move. And I had been sort of thinking that Kyle the shot he would take would be against Shauhin. That's what I had thought. But now, you know, you open up the door to like, okay, now you waited to 7. If Shauhin wins immunity at 7, and now all of a sudden, if Eva like is okay, I'm gonna play the idol on Joe or whatever, and then now all of a sudden, it's like, well, now you don't have the numbers or you don't have the target to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one thing if it was just the numbers, but it's the fact that Eva has all this ammunition as well. Right. And, you know, I wonder at what point is she going to have to start thinking offensively with it versus just defensively?
Yeah. The one thing about the safety without power that is interesting here, where that the safety without power with the numbers being as small as they are, where it's potentially like 4 to 3, like her like leaving a tribal council would actually screw up her side's numbers pretty bad.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, does that expire the same time as the idol? Or does
I'm not sure. I want to say maybe it's this week that it expires, but it does. Like, what I would love to see, I think this would be so cool if somebody could find some way to spook Eva to trigger her into using the safety without power on her or Joe to weaken her side's numbers so that they would not be able to do what they're trying to do.
And I think that would work, but I think that would probably almost be a misread of Eva. Mm-hmm. Like, she's such a team first person. Don't you think that she'd rather play the idol, even if it compromises her chances in the next round to be able to protect her team? Is how I feel like she would do it. What I would love to see someone do with the safety without power is to give it to somebody on the other side.
Yeah, take their number away. Yeah,
take their number away. And
they're like the opposite of what I'm saying.
Do like a split in an easier method, you know, because there's less numbers to worry about.
Yeah. If it's going to be, okay, it's going to be, 3-3. I don't know when it expires. Maybe it expires at 6. I'm trying to think. I think that Rachel was able to use her advantage last season at, was it 6 or even 5? That she played her idol at 6. I think she played her block a vote on Sam at 5. I think so. Maybe safety without power goes to 5.
My guess is 6. I think idol might be the only thing at 5. I could be wrong for that. I'm trying to think of Janet as well in 39.
I think that was 5. That she got idol nullified.
Idol nullifier. So it's like, it depends. Like, okay, maybe it is everything goes until 5. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. Okay. So, Kaleb, give me your thoughts on where everything is at. And a lot of people have been very down on Mitch. Do you want to defend Mitch?
Okay. If I was to defend Mitch, you know, and forgive me if I fill in the blanks for me here, but my thinking is that he thinks right now he has the 4 within the 6, looking at Kyle, Kamilla, Shauhin, and himself.
So here, tell me what Mitch's 4 is, because I don't know it.
I feel like it's him, Shauhin, Kamilla, and Kyle.
Okay.
I feel like I saw at least 1 or 2 times where they were explaining a plan to him as that 4 kind of off to the side in an episode. And not this episode. I think maybe the episode before that, right? So I wonder if he just thinks that if he runs down one more number, that they do the flip at that point. But, again, this is waiting for the perfect time versus shooting a little bit sooner, almost like Tony and Cagayan getting LJ, you know what I mean? Like a round or 2 sooner, is going to catch the entire, team and alliance, more by surprise. And it also limits, I don't want to, we're trying to defend Mitch here. I'm not going to go too far.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. Do you want to prosecute Mitch?
Well, to me, in an alliance, yes, you have to play, trusting the alliance and trusting the group over the individual. And if you prioritize the group over the individual, you're more likely to be able to make it the furthest in the game. But there is also an element of how do we limit the options of the people I'm working with? So that way, ultimately, the people who they trust the most are right here. And I just think he has too much evidence at this point that Joe and Eva have made such inroads with Shauhin and Kyle that, to think about how we can potentially eliminate one of those numbers now might be a good idea, right?
Yeah. So if I'm going to try to defend where Mitch is at, okay, I would say that like the people in Survivor history who have been able to sort of like infiltrate the big alliance, like I'm talking about like Chris Doherty, like a Danny Boatwright.
Okay.
Like they kind of like end up being the people who totally become like, sucked into the big alliance. They're just sort of like they hang on the big alliance. The big alliance feels like, hey, this person's just like the chill, cool person that just wants to see us succeed.
Mailman, he runs into trees. How threatening!
He's just the fun mailman who gets chased by the dog. And little does he know the dog is on the chain. He's just he's the just like your girlfriend said, don't worry about this guy. He's fine. And then
or husband, right?
Yeah, right. And that they just sort of like, oh, like Mitch he's not doing anything. And then all of a sudden they look up and something breaks and the 4 goes after each other. And all of a sudden Mitch sneaks his way into the final 3. I think that's like what Mitch is hoping for. And look, there is a better track record probably for that than the person who has been, and I always call this like the Troyzan, the person who is like the loud person on the bottom who's like, hey, everybody, we got to flip.
Yeah, the Sierra.
And really, and that was Star. Star was that person. But we as the audience, we love that person. We love it when they are like, yes, you have to do something.
Yeah. That's funny. I just lost my train of thought. The Star thing just cracked me up. What were you saying right before that?
What Mitch is trying to do probably has a better track record than what we want Mitch to do.
You caught me. You caught me back up. I agree, but I do feel like it's getting later and later in the game.
Yeah.
Where it's harder to think that way. The example that you're using would be maybe like Katura.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Katura did that, and she got in with the Reba 4.
Yeah, where she knew, okay, maybe I'm not on the inside of this group, but this group has got to break up at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what Survivor history has shown us, is that this group has got to break up. And so if I'm just around, I'll be a number and I'll be able to kind of move and shake. The only problem with that strategy is if the group is actually bonded, right? And they actually want to go to the end together. Then they've ran more of the game, and you took a calculated risk, and it just didn't happen to go the way that you had thought.
Yeah,
right?
And to go back to your season, the Reba 4 was really like 2 separate pairs, but then there was overlap with Dee and Austin also. But it wasn't necessarily like, I don't know if people like looked towards the Reba 4 as like, this is like this unbreakable unit. Was that how you saw them?
I won't pretend like we knew, oh, this is this 4 alliance that has 2 idols and, has all these like advantages, right? But, in the game, the thing that was probably the thing that gave them away the most, at least to me, was when I went to the journey with them and when we went to the merge, they talked a lot about the bottom of their tribe. So they're like, oh, Jay Maya, she's hard to trust. She's been like looking for idols, and same thing with, Sifu to this day, you know what I mean? Like, Sifu, this is crazy, this guy. So it did show a hierarchy within their tribe, that at least there was 2 people on the bottom, but not necessarily how tight the top 4 were. You assume that the women and the men were close together, but you didn't know how tight those 2 pairs were.
Caleb, this 4 doesn't even try to hide it.
It's crazy.
This 4 is they're together all the time, and they talk about it at tribal council of, hey, now, do you think that any part of it is like, hey, they voted out David last week? Was that so? Are they were they breadcrumbing Mitch a little bit of like, hey, Mitch, we voted out David. You never know what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I think that was maybe hey, one for you, one for us. It's like the movie business, right? And so Mitch was like, okay, I got to give one back to you guys because you just did one for me. So I don't know, maybe that's like a reciprocity. That's a big thing in sales and life, right? And so maybe that was part of the motivation, or part of how they cajoled him into going along with this plan.
Yeah. Was the plan to go to Rocks was that actually something that Mitch should have more strongly considered, or was that asking a little bit too much from Mitch to go for Rocks? It would have been basically, like, we looked at the numbers last night on the know-it-alls. There would have been 5 Rocks, so he would have had a 1 in 5 chance to go home on the Rocks.
Yeah, I think there's 2 conversations here. One is, should he have gone to Rocks? And the second is, for the bottom, was there a better way for them to convince him to go to Rocks? Right? Yeah. So you want to start with we can start with the first. Yeah, him going to Rocks. I think the problem for Mitch is that he didn't, I don't think, assess or realize like the threat or the danger he was in, right? If you don't have a bigger threat, you're not going to be motivated for action. They always say in sales that someone is going to be, semi-motivated by their goals, but they're really going to be moved by, the implication of not moving, right? Like, what is it costing them? What is that feeling? What is that stress? Whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah. We're more afraid to lose something than to get something.
Exactly. Right. And so that, I think, is the problem, is that he didn't realize and maybe we don't know, it could be the other way, but the look at this group and how tight that 4 is, and not to mention Kamilla, is that you got to feel that, this was the right time for him to make a move. And especially, I guess he doesn't know how tight him and Kamilla are. And maybe that's part of the case that she should have made, Kamilla and Kyle, sorry. But there's a good chance that there should have been a flip from that side versus his side, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right, how do they then go about convincing him?
So, it's interesting because, how many times we loved Rocks on 45. Jake was a big advocate. Emily was ready. Like, lots of people were ready to go to Rocks. Mm-hmm. And, from experience, when I was in the position of trying to convince Katurah to go to Rocks, just from almost common sense, I just felt like that pitch should not have come from me to really push her, because if it comes from the person in jeopardy, it just comes across more.
Now that's Drew is in jeopardy, not Katurah.
No. In my season, when I was going home, and it was 3-3, Austin, Julie, and D, me, Katurah, and Jake is what I was thinking about.
Okay.
Points. And so I was in this position that Star was in, right? And so trying to convince Katurah, I just felt like coming across from myself was not the right way to push her, because, if you're coming from the person who has everything to lose, it's hard to be very believable that you're looking out for someone else's best interest, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the idea in sales is, when you have this, especially in larger organizations where you can't sell to every person, is you're going to have a champion, somebody who sells on your behalf, right? And that was Jake in my season. What I will say, looking back on it in hindsight, is that it maybe doesn't matter which person it is, but it should be coming from the person who has the best relationship with the person who's going to have to make the ultimate decision. Yeah. Right? Okay. So I think that them starting with Star pitching to Mitch was not probably the best way to do it. Yeah, and I don't even know if they planned it that way. I'm not sure that that there was a meeting. It's okay, all right. Star, you make the first contact with Mitch on this plan. I think that Star is just maybe a little impulsive, and it's okay, this is the plan. This is it. I got to move, and I'm going to go talk directly to Mitch, where maybe
that a huddle maybe might have been like, okay, this is how we're going to Operation Italy, this getting Mitch to flip over to us.
And that was the miss, but it seemed like they did have a huddle, right? Like middle of the night, like after tribal council, it was Mary, Kamilla, and Star all talking.
Yeah. Where was everybody else? Mitch was probably with the other group of like, hey, it's us five, right? He's probably getting
classic team huddle,
council
and before.
Right. So that was the issue where maybe, I think that maybe going to whoever he trusted the most, probably Kamilla, maybe might have been the person to sell him better on that. But yeah, he just like, when they told him about it, he was just like, what? Like, I would never do that. He didn't seem like he was close.
Yeah. Which is, did you guys talk about Ghost Island last night? Because that's got to.
I did say that, hey, Mitch, Laurel and Donathan called. They want their game back.
Yeah. It did give a little bit of, at least Laurel was, I think waffled a few more times. But yeah, he couldn't even believe that it was an offer that was made. Yeah.
Yeah. So to go back to that. Okay. So Mitch in his confessional, he had a confessional last night where he was talking about, he's like, I know the people at home are saying, hey, Mitch, you got to make a move. But I'm not just going to do this. You can't work with people you don't trust. That I want to give a shout out to the producer who said to Mitch, hey, Mitch, what do you say to the people at home who are saying, Mitch, you got to make a move? I don't think that was an organic thought that Mitch just rattled off in the confessional.
Yeah. That's just, that's experience. That's a pro. I don't know who, maybe it was Clark. I don't know who was
it was a great question. And it was the number one question on everybody's mind.
Yeah. It's interesting. Do you think that you can make moves with people that you don't trust? Like, where do you fall on that?
What choice does he have? Like, I kind of feel like that, maybe it doesn't work out, but I think that the common theme that I hear from a lot of the survivors, and maybe this is how you feel, is like, I would have rather gone down swinging. I would rather lose this game taking a shot that didn't work rather than looking back at the shot I didn't take. And I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of Survivor players, and I do feel like that is a very common sentiment that people have in terms of like when they look back at their Survivor game.
Yeah, I 100%. I think like it's not even just making the move and playing offense, but it's also it's going to be a great moment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's going to be much more fun to look back on, being like, I was playing and pushing and fighting the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it's hard when you see, I can make it to 6 or 5, and who knows what'll happen. It's that unknown, right? And hope, if people are hopeless, they fight. But if they have hope, they're more likely to stay still,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and good job by the Majority Alliance, and good job, stringing Mitch along, that he feels like either I have hope that this big alliance is going to split up, or that he might feel like, hey, I just need to get to whatever number, and then I'm going to beast out in the competitions and, win 6-5, make a fire, and then go to the final 3, and I'm Gabler, and all of a sudden I'm going to sneak in and steal this thing.
I was Gabler.
That's the Gabler plan, right? Of like, I'm going to make a fire. It's going to be so impressive.
Yeah, I think the other difference I think between this alliance and Reba is that I think that this alliance is like a perfect example of like the onion alliance strategy, right? Like we have a core alliance, and then we have our external alliance members that are attached on top of it. Reba never convinced everybody that the game of 45 was more of a voting block game. Like, we're constantly mixing it up. There's no true alliances, when in reality, they were the alliance. And it was easier to kind of keep everyone confused because, half of that cast, was not the biggest fans of each other. You know what I mean? On the Bellow side and everything else. And so, that was their strategy. So it's almost like two different ways that a majority alliance kind of confuses their enemies.
Now, do you think that there will be a move at 7, or do you think that I would say that the betting odds probably the chalk pick would be that Mary is going to go home at 7?
Yeah, which by the way, for this episode, when you asked me to come on,
Yeah.
I was so worried that it was Mary's boot episode, right? As my, shot in the dark sister. And I was like, oh, this is too clean. Like, what are the odds? And it wasn't. So, yeah, but I definitely am worried about Mary. Like they planted every seed in the world in terms of why she's the next person.
Yeah. And I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, but do you feel like that, in the NFL, okay, the coaches get challenges, all right? And if I use my challenges and I'm right, I win my challenges, I get a third challenge. I get my challenge back. Don't you think you successfully hit the shot in the dark? Shouldn't you get another shot in the dark?
As great as that would be, the tough part about the shot in the dark is that losing your vote it neuters in some ways a lot of, what you want the punch to be from that moment, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not an idol, right? It's a 1 in 6 shot, but it does cost you something, right? I think that, having it once and playing it successfully is probably as much as you can ask for. And in a lot of ways, what's funny about when you play the shot in the dark is that you end up becoming less of a threat than other people who have it. You look at Jake in my season, you look at Mary this time, because that person has no other ammunition.
Well, I would say Rachel, after she played hers, then, it was like, okay, well, she doesn't even have the shot in the dark now. We don't have to worry about her.
Nobody had a shot in the dark that season, right? Like
she actually, remember, she used it, and she had an idol too, and she was like played the shot in the dark and then wait to see if anybody had a reaction, and then didn't play her idol.
Yeah. Did you expect them to be like, hey, Jeff, like we want to give you our shots in the dark for rice this time?
Oh, well, the rice, that didn't even come up. Right, we could talk about the rice negotiation in a minute, because I'd like to discuss that a little further with you. But yeah, so you feel like that maybe because that you get voted out after you play the shot in the dark. It just seems like, okay, well, now, I needed to use the shot in the dark in the last vote. Like, give me at least like the opportunity to do it again.
It's tough. Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to have. It's probably fair the way it's set up, but it's tough because if you play your shot in the dark, I mean, Rachel did it perfectly. People don't think you'll have an idol after that. Like, if he had an idol, he would have played it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there is kind of like an unconscious bias, right? That you are literally helpless after you play that shot in the dark.
Yeah, he's just he's a sitting duck. Let's just get him. And that's what happened with you, where it's like, okay, well, that's next vote, small tribe. Let's go ahead and take him out. Now, all right, rice negotiation, which was like, I was a little surprised they even left that in the episode, because it was just such a nothing that happened
compared to all the riveting strategic.
I guess so. This was the right episode to have something else. So it's day 19. There's 8 people in the game. They wanted 3 people to sit out of the challenge. I mean, I'm not surprised that nobody wanted to sit out on day 19.
Yeah. It's why do you think that they
after
did it so
4 people just went on reward for chicken and waffles?
Yeah, I can't believe it was done so late in the season. Like, when you get to the end game, you realize, like, I always felt like, the first 2 days of not eating, I was just on such an adrenaline rush, never felt it. I started to really kind of feel weak around day 4 or 5. Day 6 onwards, you're cruising. Even the people who haven't eaten are, they know they can make it 5-6 more days. So at that point, it's way too late. Like, if you're going to do the rice negotiation, which has been fun, I think it just has to be earlier in the season where there's more people and people think that, oh, I can make it past this vote. Like, it gets so tight at final 7, Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe like they could. What about instead of like the big mergatory? I know they love the mergatory challenge. Okay. But what about like we get to mergatory and then we need people to sit out at merge, and then the merge tribe is going to get rice. There's no merge feast. That's the merge. We need people to sit out of the first individual immunity challenge to get rice for the post merge.
Yeah. Maybe Yeah, maybe they just change it so that way post-merge, your rewards, you can choose not to take the reward and get rice for the tribe.
I think people would take the reward.
Yeah, you think so?
I think so.
You know,
Because I mean, the reward challenges are always like team, like for the most part, like almost always team. I guess this was individual.
Yeah.
So who wants to sit out of the reward challenge for rice?
Yeah, and then it also forces survivor's hand that, like, you know, you better have some good rewards, otherwise people are going to take rice. You know, you want to make them have like that conflicted decision, like let them pick all the people, have 4 people up there, and it's like, now, do you want to give your tribe rice, or do you guys want to go on this fried chicken reward that you just got?
Yes. Okay, Kaleb. So this was a new reward for Survivor. I don't think that they've had this before, and so Jeff introduced the fried chicken and waffles reward, and then instructed the players to to lead a chant of the fried chicken and waffles song. Did you like the song?
You know, it's funny. I honestly think that Jeff is just, he's, you know, it's season 48, 50's coming. He's pushing himself. Mm-hmm. You know, he's like, what else could I get them to do? You know, sing for me, dance, you know. He's like, I think that in the moment, you know, it might be a little, like some people were more into it. Some people you could tell were like dying a little bit on the inside as they were doing it.
Yeah, I think some people were into it. I think some other people, it's like, you ever go to like
rhythm, you know, right?
Well, I was gonna say, like, you ever go to like a restaurant and like there's like 7 waiters come over and they sing you the happy birthday song, but only like one person's like kind of into it.
Yeah. I think that, you know, that when I the song, you know, it wouldn't be I wouldn't be very excited to do it, but I just think it's just Jeff's new way. I wonder what he's going to make the players do next. You know, that's like whatever, like ostensibly like, you know, ridiculous thing, just because they're on TV and everyone wants to contribute. Someone's going to put their foot down at some point. You know?
He wants to see how far that they could push the envelope. What are these contestants willing to yes and with me? Like, maybe I'll talk in a weird voice. Okay, now let's like all right, everybody, you know the chicken and waffles song. Let's go, chicken and waffles. Like, okay.
I mean, chicken. I mean, like my number one food that I was missing when I was out there, that I was like, oh, first thing when you get home, fried chicken. So
boom,
you know, it is a great reward. You know, I wonder how many people were like Eva was there, right? She was like searching in all the chips and like everything else, like in the bottom.
They had no place cards at this reward.
Yeah, it's
no named markers of where everybody's supposed to sit this time.
Yeah. So, but they have enough. Eva has enough advantages. Like they couldn't risk her getting another one.
Yeah. Eva loved it when Shauhin took a handful of whipped cream and threw it and hit her in the face. She said she was so joyful that happened.
Which shows if you do something with enough confidence, you can get away with anything. Like Shauhin was just, read the room, you know what I mean? And just took a bit of a risk.
He did. She loved it.
Yeah.
She loved it. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about, you know, with Star coming out of the game, the decision that Star made earlier in the game where she gave her idol to Eva as sort of like an olive branch. Okay, this is going to buy me something with Eva. It turns out it bought Star nothing. Bupkis.
It probably bought her a spot on the jury, at least.
Maybe bought her a spot on the jury. Because, you know, Eva, like really she said, I'm going to give you Star on a silver platter. She opened up the thing. And when I spoke with Star this morning, you know, I think that she got a little emotional talking about this in terms of that she felt like that she had self-doubt in herself to be able to open the thing. And that she seemed a little bit like, not so much that she gave the idol to Eva, but she felt like that she had regret, that she doubted that she would be able to do it. And I was really, I could see her getting emotional talking about that. And so I felt for her in that moment. But in terms of Eva, she gave her the thing. And like, I thought at the time, like, yeah, this is a pretty good move because Eva's going to tell Joe, and then they're going to say, hey, that this is a good person. Let's keep her she's with us. Let's get her in the alliance. Ultimately, no, not even a sniff of the alliance for Star. And then Eva, like, seemed to like be very adamant about Star. She said, if she wins immunity, I'll be sickened by that she has to go. And I don't know, to me, I have no issue with what Eva is, how she is playing. Like, that's all well and good. I just like, I just don't like the morality of that. Eva, still straight faced, talks about how this is the alliance of the good, honest, loyal people, when it seems like that there's some cognitive dissonance of like, yeah, I kind of, I'll choose my words carefully, like took Star's idol, and yes, it was a gift, but there was no law of reciprocity there in terms of like, maybe it was the gift, like, okay, Charity was the mergatory boot instead of Star.
Yeah. Which
like basically Star played her idol by like, instead of giving it to Uncle JP, I'm going to give it to you.
Which would have been a great moment, Yeah, I think that, you mentioned like Star has self-doubt, and like that was maybe like part of the reason why she gave it to Eva. And it almost, that first time I thought of it was reminded me of like Eric in the season 26, giving his idol to Andrea. You know what I mean? Like where it comes from, is probably something in there, right? But yeah, the thing about Survivor playing
but his doubt comes from that. Go back to season 16 when he gave the necklace away, where he's like, "Hey, I don't want any part of this. This is like bad juju. I don't want an idol."
Yeah. Eric's, Star, it's like, why do you have the self-doubt? Derek's is a little bit more, clear, right? But yeah, when it comes to Survivor, the biggest takeaway is like nothing is, you can never assume anything is implied. It has to be like an out loud, explicit, understanding, written
quid
contract.
Pro quo.
And I'm not saying quid pro quo, but I think that, giving an idol to Eva, like, can we DTR? Can we define this relationship?
I love it.
Like, what am I expecting from you by giving you this? And I think that Star, naturally, in the law of, she's a fellow sales girl, actually, law of reciprocity. Like, well, of course Eva's going to look out for me. I just gave her the most powerful tool in this game. But because she never actually explained and said specifically, this is what this means, I feel like Eva could trick or like loophole herself, maybe Kyle's her lawyer, right? And say that, well, all you did was want friendship. All you did was want, a friend after this game, or, somebody to look out for you in the near future, but we're not going to the end together. That was never the plan, right? So maybe that is probably the problem that Star had with just giving her the idol without talking it through.
Yeah. I think what is a little like hard with this is like, it seems like that they just don't like Star, and not necessarily like that Star is a threat. They seem to like want to have her out of the game.
Yeah. And I
like
wonder,
she's bothering them.
Yeah. I wonder if, and you've probably been in the spot. I've been in the spot, where you're fun, you like to joke around, you're, the like part comedian, you know what I mean? This integrity alliance, the honor, loyalty group, strength, they are all talking about how it's going to be so hard to turn on each other because they've shared all these outside bonding things together, Like, do you wonder that Star, in her lighthearted self, never let herself get to those places with those people? And so because of that, there's just an implied worry that I don't trust her as much as I trust all these other people who've been open.
Yeah, I also feel like that Star is a little bit of like Star will say what's on Star's mind. Like, and there was like a secret scene from last week. So Star was like asking people like, so who's your final three? Who's your final three? Whereas like Mitch would never. Like Mitch is like, is very like content to sort of like, sit in maybe a little bit more of like the uncomfortable silence of like, okay, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to make anybody mad about that. But Star, not that she's trying to make anybody mad, but is maybe like a little bit more willing to call things out. Like, oh, so you four people are going to the final three, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's just off-putting to the people who want to keep things nice and quiet and calm.
Yeah, Star is a newer fan, right?
I believe so.
Post-pandemic. So, it's almost like you think about her, you think about David, some of these people who are kind of making some of these mistakes of kind of pushing people in a way that is, making them feel, like they're have to show their hand. And that's the last thing you want to do if you don't feel like you can trust someone yet. If you're, you don't want to jump into all these things unless you like have first kind of take me out for dinner first. Let's get a drink, right? Before you jump into, whatever you want to do with me, So I wonder if, she kind of got ahead of herself, just being real as opposed to kind of reading where the relationship was first,
Kaleb, here we're at the final 7. How do you see the rest of the season going down?
There's going to be, so I still think personally that Kyle and Kamilla are that secret alliance number ones with each other. We've gotten so much of it,
I know.
It would be crazy if they clipped each other anytime soon, right?
I don't think that they'll clip each other, but I definitely just felt like after last night's episode that there was a deprioritizing of the number ones. And it felt like a little bit like to me, like that Kyle was treating Kamilla like she's his number 5.
And I push back on that a little bit. Just because I think
too much time with Emily, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Kyle kind of understands, if they take out Joe, who's going after Kamilla? Yeah, she pulled the move, but, it was like there's 3 or 4 people pushing that move. She's not going to be Kyle is going to be Kyle, Shauhin. Like, they're going to be so obviously targeted in the upcoming rounds, having that buffer. I think for him, he, while he wanted to work with Kamilla, it just wasn't the right timing for him to make that move yet. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they're still going to stick together. I think that they're going to stick together. I think Joe and Eva are going to stick together. So the question is going to be, do the pairs turn on each other, or ultimately is that going to be, they're going to be working together? I'm so excited to see if Kyle will take the shot at Shauhin. What do you think about this Shauhin making alliances, all these alliances with people at the bottom and, inroads?
I love to see it. I really do. But I am a little concerned that maybe he's not necessarily planning a insurgency or some sort of Shauhin vote flip. I'm a little concerned that he is just doing jury management.
Yeah, I think that, picking up people on the bottom, you love to see it. And you do that usually for one of 2 reasons, right? Usually one, because you want to make a move. And he's such a fan that, that's what we jump to, right? And then the other is so that way you're not the move. So then if they do get the numbers, they don't pick me first.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that
defensively as opposed to offensively, right?
Yes.
And at this point, if he doesn't make
yeah.
That's my worry right
now. Okay, my wheels are turning a little bit here. Okay, all right. That maybe this could be what changes everything. Is it possible that Shauhin ends up that I've been looking at? Okay, Kyle is going to he is going to pick up the people at the bottom, and he's going to take the shot at Shauhin. But I was a little concerned after he talked about how much the 4 is really such a good spot for him. Maybe he's not going to do that. But going back to in the vote where Cedric went home, Kyle and Kamilla, they were talking about, like, is there any way we could get Shauhin voted out here? And they said, oh, well, what if we can sort of like make it seem like he's doing something that we're responding to?
Totally.
What if they don't even have to make it seem that? What if Shauhin starts talking to Mary and Mitch and Kamilla and says, hey, the plan tonight, we're making the flip. We're going to take out Kyle, my biggest competition, to sit with in the final 3 with Joe and Eva. And so then Kamilla gets word of that to Kyle. And now Kyle is like, oh, baby, it's on. And then he actually now feels like that, okay, well, now I have the reason, the motive to now be able to come to go to Joe and Eva and say, hey, Shauhin is doing this, or, steal those other people on the bottom. Or if Kamilla flips over to them, now all of a sudden maybe Camilla's in the 4 with Kyle, where it's the 2 pairs maybe going to the final 4, where it's like Shauhin might be thinking, hey, I've got Mitch, I've got Mary, and I've got Kamilla to vote out Kyle. Meanwhile, it's Kamilla that flips to vote with Kyle and Joe and Eva against Shauhin.
I think I actually, my hair kind of stood up a little bit thinking about
Even
this.
more.
I love it. I think I loved what they tried to do in the Cedric vote. It's and the last time I promised I'll bring up Tony and Cagayan, but when he was flipping on LJ, what did he do? He goes and he talks to him and he's like, so what do you what are you scared of? What are you thinking next? And got him to say woo, just so he had a reason to go back to his alliance in terms of why he flipped on him.
Yeah.
Them trying to do that. If they can manufacture, and I think it'll be really easy to trick Shauhin into doing this, but there's also a real chance that he might actually do it, whether it's targeting Kyle or targeting Joe. And so I love this, and that might be how Mary can save her, get saved, late in the
you have such a connection with Mary over the shot in the dark.
Oh, it's well, there's a couple of things, because first of all, I don't know if you remember or would know this, but Mary in the preseason said that the person she wanted to play was me.
You? Yeah.
And she took that assignment too seriously.
Yeah.
Big loser tribe energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plays the shot in the dark successfully.
Yeah.
Is being talked about as a threat on TV. She did too good of a job. I recommend people to pick winners for this in the future, right?
Okay.
But sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you more about Mary.
Yeah. No, I mean, Mary is a kindred spirit to me because, we have this, the 17th place group chat club and the 0 vote finalists club. And so it's such a fun room here being in the shot in the dark played successfully club. What a draft pick that we could have picked up.
Yes. Is Jamie Lynn Ruiz in your group chat also?
It's kind of like if you follow the NBA, Steve Kerr, he's the all-time leader in 3-point percentage, but he has a quarter of the makes as everybody else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's he's in the club, but it's
multiple group chats.
He's not Stephen Curry, you know what I mean? Or Kyle Korver or Klay Thompson in terms of they did 4,000 or 2,000 threes or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say, I was even thinking about kind of, because they have the 17th place group chat. I was gonna, but I ended up not doing this, but I was gonna bring to Boston a WWE style championship belt that was gonna say safe on it. And I was going to give it to Mary as kind of you hold on to this until the next person plays and then you pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
I had all sorts of ideas for it, but then I just such a procrastinator. I didn't end up getting a chance to pull it off in time. So I was like, oh, well, but I thought it would have been kind of a fun little memento. Yeah.
Now, speaking of the different NBA players, have you seen this clip that's floating around of Mitch? That this is him. He's doing Dikembe Mutombo. Have you seen this? Right?
Yeah,
isn't that the same? He's doing it
That goes so hard. I love that. Seeing exactly, it was Dikembe Mutombo who actually played the Raptors.
He was another person who blocked everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Mitch. I always like watching him in the challenges. I know the consensus is he's great. He's a great challenger, and I actually don't think he's the greatest at the challenges. What I think he is he's a closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has that clutch gene, inside of him. And so,
He even closed the vote last night.
Doc Rivers is a great coach. 5 games this season, right? So what can you do?
Yeah. Okay. All right. But so for Mary, do you think that there is a future for Mary in this game?
It's hard to see her path forward at this point. Whatever it is, it's eliminating the people who are saying her name the most. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'll mute that.
What are you getting, a Slack blow up?
Yeah, technically this is a work
Mertz
day.
Jaffer on Slack.
Yeah, every medium. In my season, I remember thinking to myself the whole time, it doesn't matter if someone says my name, because if it makes sense to vote with them, we should vote together. And, you look at D, the person who won, or Jam Jam, or some of these people, it's like, if you say my name, you got to go. She doesn't have the power to be able to do that. But I do think that, like, if you leave a Joe in the game, which I'd love to talk about Joe and Mary on the beach together.
Yeah.
Or an Eva, like, your name is always going to be at the front of the line. And so if you can kind of like weaken that side who's like clearly against her, that's what she has to do. So whatever that alliance looks like, that's where she has to go.
Okay. Well, tell me about your reaction to that conversation that Joe had with Mary, where he kind of explains to her, like, hey, everybody feels like that you were the bad influence on David.
I feel like Joe has been so dominant this whole season. Like, I can't even really tell you how many missteps he's had. This is the first time that I was like, this feels like a miss in terms of how he went about it, right? I don't know what you felt about it, but I feel like if you are kind of reaching out to somebody, kind of like Eva when she was talking to Mary, at least Eva was like, I'm, trying to be genuine here. Like, he was talking to her about the fact that one of us is going to be on the jury. You know what I mean? Like, you have to at least, like, the nicety of pretending that this is not that you're not looking to potentially jury manage her, right?
But I think that Joe has done this consistently, because I think that I can recall with Say back when that they were on the split tribal council, that Say was like, hey, can you and I talk? He's like, yeah, go ahead. We're right here. Like, he was not really like giving Say, I felt like, too much of an audience. Like, it was just basically like, well, if you want to say something, I'm right here. Just say what's on your mind. But I didn't really feel like that he was really like paying her a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually been one of like the strong parts about his game, is that because he's not even entertaining some of these conversations where he knows the problem with Survivor is that everyone wants to keep every door open. And when you do that, it makes people insecure about which door you're going to take. So what Joe's really good at, I think, is making decisions early on in terms of, I'm taking this door, I'm closing that door. And what he did with Say there is probably exactly what he should have done, right? Because she's going home and she doesn't need to create any other insecurity in his alliance.
Yeah, she's not even going to the jury.
She's not even going to the jury. Otherwise, he would have been like, hey, one of us is going to be there, right?
Yeah.
So I think with Mary, the problem was that, if he's going to kind of talk to her from a place of giving her advice or being a friend, it has to come from a place of genuinely, helping her, right? Or in some sort of genuine way, not, hey, I'm telling you this so that way hopefully you can remember this for a vote. It reminds me like what's famous jury pandering. You remember our boy Yul Kwan with Penner's hat?
Yeah.
And every time people were like, this is so obviously this guy's working the jury. And he's like, no, he wanted his hat. I wanted to give him his hat because he said it was important to him. Like, you have to at least pretend and put on the face, even if nobody believes it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Penner was happy to get I'd like to get my hat back, please.
Yeah. He was like one of the only guys I think who probably spoke from the jury. It's like, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, you're not even supposed to be doing this. Do you feel like that people were pandering to you on the jury?
I was so early. I think that the jury working happens later and closer to the end. You think Rachel interviewing everybody and getting all of their games and stuff, right? It doesn't happen so early because I don't think people are ready to show their hand yet. I also had half the group, so it was also a little bit different in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what about in terms of Joe? We haven't talked too much about him. He feels like that there is an inevitability around Joe. Are you sensing that also?
Yeah. I mean, this guy is so dominant right now, is how I feel. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of a less charismatic version of Tom Westman in some ways, in terms of how the season is going for him, which isn't saying much, because Tom is just like one of the most charismatic guys ever. Right. But I feel like looking at Joe, the difference between him and Tom, one of the things I feel like it's like we're seeing him like kind of father on TV versus lead. Tom, like if Eva screwed something up, Joe would be like, I love you, no matter what, right? And if Tom's screwed up in Tom's alliance, he'd hold them a little bit more accountable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. that I think that that's a very good comparison, because I think that there is Joe has done a very good job in this game, and I feel like that both of them have a charisma about them, but there's different types of charisma, and I think that like what Joe has is just this like quiet, strong confidence where he's just a rock. He's like unmovable, and I think that in a game that's as chaotic as Survivor, I think a lot of people are just drawn into the gravity of his stillness. Whereas Tom was, to your point, more of a personality, that there was like a little bit more of like a twinkle in his eye. And I like how you said that he was like a leader. He's like a Captain Kirk, he's somebody that like people were willing to follow, as opposed to that Joe, I feel like this has more of like a gravity that people are just drawn to him because, okay, he's obviously in charge.
Yeah, the tough part for Joe is not necessarily like where he's come to right now, although I still don't like good for him. Like it's third immunity as well. But everything he's doing with his alliance, but it's almost this next stage of the game where you have to lie or get plan the numbers of the end game, that I feel like this archetype almost like a I don't know, what do you say, Mike Turner in 42?
I think though that Mike, if I was gonna like be like adjusting the levers, like I almost feel like that Mike has like Mike's a big personality, that he is, loud in a good way. He's like, I think is a fun guy to be around. I think that for Joe, I think he has less of that.
Yeah, for sure. I just meant more so in the sense of when Mike got it to the end of the game, he
right,
could have won, but because he couldn't really like wrap his head around about like when he lied or when he was duplicitous, that the jury didn't think like there was a disconnect from his game. And I wonder with Joe at this point when he has to start lying and stuff, this is the part where he could lose it. But right now I feel like he's in the front runner, right? In the chances of getting there, especially if he was going to play an idol on him.
Yeah, I think that just having that like self-perception of being able to not just, read everybody else, but also be able to read how everybody else sees you is so key. I think that Mike, that was a flaw that he had. It will remain to be seen if that's a flaw for Joe, but I definitely think that if we were going to talk about like red flags, like that might be one of them, where that if he does see himself as this person who has stayed true, as we saw with David last week. And I thought that was such an interesting conversation where you saw that really that was like a real like a major issue for Joe when David said, yeah, you went back on your word. And he said to him like point blank, like, I'm not capable of doing that.
Yeah. That was possibly the worst thing that he could have said.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was no coming back from that.
No coming back. And, he to be fair, he had, fumbled a couple of different areas, in terms of like how he socially was like talking about his strategy or his plan to take a back seat, which didn't really happen. Right. But I don't know. David is kind of like, to me, I don't know. I feel like there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that, the more that you think that you're the threat, the more you act like the threat.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's almost, I always feel like in sales, the first thing that they teach, everyone thinks is it discovery? Is it this? Is it that? It's all mindset. Right. And if I was to give any advice to anybody who is coming into the game, who sees themselves potentially as a threat, is to like, that's not how you should consider yourself. You really should consider yourself, whether it's, the underdog, or you see this person's like, these are my flaws. Because the more that you see that, you don't see anyone else and how they're the threat, And I think Joe does that actually pretty well. He just sees himself as like everybody else, even though he's clearly, one of the biggest threats in the game right now,
Yeah. I'm so interested in hearing about like the things that you've learned from your work in terms of Survivor. Now, were you always into Survivor first and then found that those were things that helped you in your work? Or were you already, I remember from your preseason interviews that you've had so many different lines of work, did you then find Survivor and felt like that was something that sort of like really overlapped with what you were already doing?
Yeah. So I originally watched Big Brother.
Yes.
Right. So I did that when I was younger, and it's kind of like you're growing up, and it's like, are you a Big Brother guy or Survivor guy? So I was like, I'm cool on Survivor. I got my thing back in the glory days, and I found Survivor around the time, actually before I was officially in sales. The reason I got into sales is I had all these lines of work, and I was, a lifeguard, and I was, I got my first job at 13. I was always kind of working, but I started a painting business at 17. And then a security business and a Christmas light business. And that's kind of how I paid for college and kind of paid for my life. And as much as I enjoyed running a business and having, being a leader and having employees and stuff, I actually didn't. Like, all those detail-oriented tasks and like managing and like kind of getting into spreadsheets was not my favorite part. What I was great at was connecting with people on the sales side of things. And I was wondering, how could I potentially lean in on like my greatest skill as opposed to kind of be like so diversified in everything I'm trying to learn. Right. Yeah. And this connected right around the time I was getting into Survivor. So it was fun timing. I was going back and watching the seasons. And I think everybody, no matter where you come from, is going to connect what they do with the show and their experience. But sales is just so applicable in so many ways because obviously sales is every part of life, All
right. So you found in your work that, okay, here's where my superpowers are, and I really want to focus there as opposed to trying to round out the rest of my skills in what I'm not so good at. Do you feel like, is that how Survivor players should be looking at their game, of like really trying to drill down on, this is like the one or two areas where I'm really good, and then let me not try to put as much energy into those other things I'm not as good at?
It's difficult because I feel like in Survivor, the thing that you don't want to ignore are your blind spots, right? And if you are weak in some areas, you need to almost be hyper conscious in terms of how that is affecting other people, even more than just your strengths, So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. But, I definitely feel like, looking back on my experience, I was pulling back a lot by the end. And if anything, I wish I almost like pushed more, and
shine brighter.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say,
why not? Why not though?
Couture at the end, it's like I wish I kind of was the person who was like really like having those conversations with her and like really kind of putting her through every reason. And I was trusting a lot more of Jake with that, and kind of like the champion that I had mentioned. And in hindsight, I wish I kind of like just realized like this is what I'm here for, and yeah.
Rather than try to be as well-rounded yourself, that could you find an ally? Is there a way to do it with other people?
Yeah, I think that, you look at Survivor and you look at this season, and it's just, and you look at Reba, the most annoying part about talking to the Reba before is that they're like, Survivor was so easy. Like the whole time they were like, this is just a cakewalk. They joke about it, all the time. And you just want to strangle them, And I bet you, and I don't know this, but if you talk to these guys, they're probably like, that was
easy
the whole time, like there's a clear strategy that works. And I feel like, building in alliance, like that is the way that you like should want to come into Survivor. And that's why quietly for Survivor 50, I am worried that the new era is going to be kind of cooked because they don't have, the roots of that compared to these old era players,
Yeah. But do you feel like that the new era players will know each other better? Like, I kind of feel, I don't know. That's not necessarily how I see it. I feel like that, I think that the old era is more likely to get pantsed by the new era.
Really? Yeah. I feel like
in that, I think that there are like, there may be people from the old era who have not been keeping on top of like what's been going on like week in, week out on Survivor. And for certain old era players to try to play the new era game, I'm just, I would be very concerned. I think a lot of them, their head might be spinning.
Yeah, I think that I look at the new era and I think that there's going to be like apart from the fact that there might not be as many numbers, I think there's always going to be like, it's a very insecure group, you know, about like, can I trust this person or should I trust, like, there's going to be, I think, you know, a lot more like space between the numbers versus the old era, I think, apart from the fact that some of them known each other for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years together. So they have all these roots. I just think that they have a level of, you know, you look at this group, probably part of the reason why it's doing so well is because everyone's a little bit older, you know, there's an understanding and people are working much tighter together. And I think that's likely to happen with the old era. I don't think what happens at Winners at War happens again because I think everyone saw Winners at War.
Yeah, but I feel like that the Winners at War playing field, I think, was like probably a little bit more even, where, not to do a whole Survivor 50 preview now, where I feel like that I just could see, even if like the old era has numbers, I would think that they would be especially vulnerable to not seeing that next Operation Italy coming, where it's like, oh, they're not even thinking that somebody has the block of vote and that this other thing is there. And even if they feel like, hey, we've got our 6 people, like what are they going to do? We have 6. You know, I feel like that they are very vulnerable to like and maybe it will break in their favor if the fan vote comes in, no twists, no advantages. If it comes along that way and then it's a little bit more of a straightforward game, I think that plays to their strength. But like the more like bells and whistles there are, I think the more likely it is, I think that some old era players will not even know what's waiting around the corner for them.
Yeah. I think that, you know, Operation Italy was almost like a miracle that it got pulled off. You know what I mean? Like it was such high level.
And I'm using Operation Italy as like, you know, sort of just like a terminology for like a next level plan that wasn't right in front of the faces of people. And I think that some of these people who have been out the game for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and some of them maybe were not even that capable of spotting that plan when they were, you know, in their younger days, I think could be walking into an ambush in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, you know, we'll see what happens on the other side, you know, you know, it's fun to see you're on one side of the spectrum. I'm on the other. I think that, you know, I think that the new era is cooked. So we'll see how that goes, unfortunately.
Kaleb, I have some questions for you from the listeners, okay? And so we haven't talked too much about Kamilla, okay? Will Harrington has a question for you. What should a player do if they don't fit the narrative/meta of their season? In this case, Kamilla wanting to play strategic when everybody else wants to stay loyal. Yeah, this really was probably the worst season in the 40s for Kamilla to have gotten cast on.
Yeah, I think so. You know, Kamilla.
She wanted to play a very fluid game. She said in her preseason, she's like, I don't want to be on a boring season. I want to be on a season that's very fluid, where moves are happening. Kamilla, we have some bad news for you.
Yeah. Oh, I will say this. You know, some people talk the talk. She's trying to walk the walk, right? And she's kind of.
And I don't begrudge her at all. I think that she's done the best she has with, like, you know, her poker hand has not been great.
Yeah.
I think she's still at the table.
Yeah, still at the table. You know what I mean? Her chips were running, you know, getting lower and lower compared to some of the people there. You know what I mean? But she's bluffing still. She's doing everything that she can, right?
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I mean, I love Kamilla's like the type of game that I root for watching. And same with Kyle as well. Kind of like more of like a social and strategic viewpoint on the game, right? And, you know, when you're on the outside of like the meta or just outside of the numbers, right? I think that, you know, the best thing that you can do is just make yourself invaluable to one or two people on the inside, as high on the totem pole as you can. And the closer you can get there and find some protection, the more time that hopefully passes where you can hopefully find a crack to be able to walk through. But you have to be able to, you have to be ready to walk through that crack and not just, you know, forget that you're playing that you're playing someone else's game for show, right? So I think she will do that if she has the opportunity. She tried today. Unfortunately, she couldn't, you know? Yeah.
I don't think she's going to go down without a fight. I think that she'll like make a move if it's there. I know that I was reading in the comments yesterday to respond to that. I gave Kamilla a pass after what went on. And I saw some pushback of like, Rob, why do you give her a pass? Just because Mary wanted to vote out Kyle? Why didn't she say to Mary, okay, what about Eva? Why don't we try to get the 4 people to vote on? But that Mitch wasn't going along with this no matter what. There was no scenario where Mitch was going to vote with Star.
Yeah, and that probably is where, I don't know how she spent her time in that day, and maybe that's kind of, if you were to give her any flack for this episode, it's maybe like, could she have still found a way to talk to Mitch and just highlight, where they are in the game together, right? And given him maybe a little bit more confidence that if they go to Rocks, here's maybe why somebody might flip, right? Mm-hmm. You look at Eva, she has, safety without power. She has an idol. Is she really going to go to Rocks for somebody when she could flip with all that ammunition and probably make it to the end of the game? Mm-hmm. You look at Kyle, who she has a connection with, along with Mitch from their original tribe. Like, hey, we could maybe plant the seed with Kyle and see, I just don't know. If Mitch was worried that if we go to Rocks, we're going to lose, I'm going to have to put my hand in a bag. That's one thing about making a decision, but could you have maybe lowered that chance for him? And could Kamilla have tried some of that? Maybe,
And Mitch might not be giving Kamilla the time of day where he's like, why would I talk to you? You're not even in power.
Yeah, that's true.
I got to hang out with Joe. I got to hang out with Shauhin.
I hang out with my strong people.
Yeah.
As challengers,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cedric Shady updates. Do you wish that there was a Kaleb updates account when you played? Like had star updates?
I was fine with what happened on the internet during my season. To me, like I like to stay away from it. Keep my feet on the ground, so to speak. In terms of, I don't know, it's just there's so much you can read about your season, yourself. So star updates is perfect for star.
Yeah. Okay. So Cedric Shady updates says, as someone who caught 11 votes at one tribal, how should someone try to fight against the anybody but me hive mind? How do you fight back against that? When everybody's like, no, I'm just making the safe move. Like, you know what, Chrissy, all right, that's it. Everybody's writing your name down. We're all going with this.
Yeah, I think that saw a lot of votes, and I think it kind of like forces your hand, because the one strategy, like depending on where you are in the hierarchy, like some people get all the votes for different reasons. For me, it was because they wanted me out, and people deemed it a threat. And so you kind of have to almost, like, for me, what I was thinking was I just have to be honest about like how I see the structure in the game and try and pull these outside people together against, what I thought was a Reba group. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to. But I think that your opportunity is you can either try and, find, become invaluable to a new ally, lay low, or, play offense. And because if you're going home anyways, you might as well play offense. So where is the game? Who is at the bottom of our group, and be able to try and flip those numbers?
And I think it's such a hard question for people, because I think that the temptation is to be like we saw with Chrissy, where it's like, can't you all see what's happening here? Like, hello, like, what are you doing? Like, I think that people end up, they're like, okay, we're not necessarily interested in that. But I do wonder if there is like a play, and maybe this is like maybe what Mitch is trying to do, of like to like go to the top and sort of like say like, hey, maybe is there like can I make myself valuable to you in some other way, where maybe they're like, oh, actually, like maybe there is this other thing that maybe I want to do. Maybe you can sort of like give yourself, make yourself valuable to the people who are the decision makers, as opposed to try to rally all the scared people on the bottom to make a move.
It's so hard to rally the bottom.
The bottom ain't rallying.
Yeah, they scurry.
They're scared. That's why they're on the bottom in the first place.
Exactly. It's almost like you maybe go for the top or go for the middle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's like the bottom of the core alliance potentially to make a big run.
Maybe there's some sort of like coup from inside, maybe, or maybe you go to the people at the top and there's like, maybe they want to sort of like take out somebody like a squeaky wheel.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, it's a tough spot to be in,
Sure.
But I think you have to lean on, and then it's also, people make these decisions in silos. Sometimes you really should be, who are my closest people? What numbers do I have? Because a landslide vote does not necessarily mean that every single person was against you, right? And, understanding as a group, like, what other paths do you see for me as well? Especially if you have allies that you can trust to share information, like Kyle and Kamilla are constantly doing for each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So lots of different ways to play it. I think that, like in the case of Christy, I think that when she's like leading the charge against Joe, and that, it's very hard for anybody, for when the person at the top is like, hey, that's what we're doing here today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem. If you go to the person at the top who has all the power and already has a path to the end already, it may be hard to get them off that path. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This is from Hudson Webb, who asks, do you think that Shauhin believes he could win a final 3 with Joe and Eva?
The guy has a lot of confidence. He's a debater, right? Mm-hmm. I saw on Instagram, he's like giving people opinion, like tips.
I saw that.
Write a compelling speech, Maybe he does think that. But if you're looking at the game, I don't know how you reasonably can look at kind of like comparable resumes. You know what I mean? He could say, I was the only one who kept this, I could have flipped this whole time, but I don't know how he could think that. So you have to think he's going to make a move at some point. I think that he definitely sees Kyle as part of his end game, although I don't know if Kyle sees Shauhin as part of his end game.
I just feel like, to me, it's almost like that. I'm trying to think of the right analogy for this, but I kind of feel like that for like that Kyle and Shauhin are sort of like brothers to me in that, and it's like that both are trying to be like the one that's like succession of like, who's dad gonna leave the business to? And I think that the two of them are sort of like jockeying for position of who is dad's favorite. Only one of them can go to the final 3 with Joe and Eva, and both of them are sort of like blocking each other from it. And they work together to get out David, the common enemy. But I do feel like that I think it's unlikely that either of them ever takes a shot at Joe. But I do feel like that at some point they look at each other. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I think also when it comes to, okay, now we have to turn on our allies, not just the enemy, it's the more reasons that you have in terms of why I turned on you, the easier it'll be. And I think Kyle just has such a layup with you searched my bag and I knew it the whole time, yada, yada, yada. Like, there's, no doubt in my mind that I think that even though they're jockeying for the same position, I think Kyle is ready to move sooner on that versus Shauhin, who I think could still be weighing, like, when do I take out Joe and Eva, right?
I don't think that he would. I feel like that going back to, Joe was part of his original alliance. I had seen also on X.com some criticism of Kyle of like, how, why would you be in a 4-person alliance with 3 people that were from the same starting tribe? Like, aren't you feeling like that you are clearly 4 out of 4?
Yeah, especially when Shauhin was also targeting him, right? Mm-hmm. But, I think that you also have to give a little bit of credit of, just Kyle's ability to read the room and just kind of look at Joe and be like, I get Joe, and he's also, it feels like to me, been planting these seeds of against Shauhin, through other people and throughout the season, right? That Shauhin is this big threat, that he is kind of like this sketchy, kind of like almost Shauhin was doing with David. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You always hear like Shauhin's this big threat, Shauhin's this big threat. And it's kind of reminds me, it's always hard to kind of show someone's social game on Survivor. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I wonder if he's just confident in the fact that Joe will turn on Shauhin before he ever turns on him.
I don't know. It's a big gamble. Like because I don't think that Joe's going to turn on anybody.
Did you see how Kyle did that challenge with the blocks? Like, this is a gambling guy. This guy always slinging.
Tell me how he did it.
Well, he was, I think, and you always kind of zone out a little bit sometimes in the challenges, but he was, in double and triple speed of everybody else. He was doing like multiple laps, you know what I mean? Catching up to people like that. And, I guess his vices are not just underage drinking. I was like, he's a gambler. I know, you listen, I like the craps table, blackjack. I was like, I know the energy, and I bet you this guy's just taking some calculated risks.
Yes. Risks. Now, have you ever done this challenge at a beach drop or anything?
No, I have not.
Yes. Okay. How do you think you would be at it?
I think if you have like kind of good touch, you'll be all right.
Yeah. I tried it one time at one of these events where they have the challenges, and I had just seen, remember Sydney in Survivor Co. Wrong won this challenge, and she went very slow. Yeah. And I tried to do it like, okay, I'm never going to let my thing fall. Yeah. And I got smoked.
Yeah, I think, without having played it, the strategy is you kind of want to go a little bit faster at the beginning because you have the most leeway, right? Yeah. You understand the moment, like how it rocks back and forth and where the sweet spot is. And then as you get higher, you slow down along the way.
Did you like when they went to like super slow-mo when Joe was going backwards and then the fly landed on his forehead?
They always do a great job of kind of editing the same because it's the same challenge, right? It's like, what are we going to focus on this time that's a little bit different, right? The level of focus. And so I always appreciate them kind of like trying to put twists on something that we may already know, but just from a different way of looking at it, At least they're trying something for the same challenges.
Yeah. What do you think about Star moving forward? Do you think that we'll ever see Star back on Survivor?
I don't know. You know what? Coming into like the first few episodes, I was like, Star is fine. I wasn't blown away by Star right away, but the more time that we saw her, the more like she really won me over kind of throughout, especially this laughing, kind of not necessarily like there's like a Southern thing that I think that she was, I don't know, like just slinging it a little bit unassuming, like a little bit unthreatening, but just having her way of kind of getting her point across all the time. So it's so tough to say. It's like you look at what category you are, where we fit in.
Yeah, but I think that she was such a breath of fresh air, especially in this season where there's a lot of groupthink, where I think that she was just such an original. And she was like in so many different ways where it's like, oh, this person is the new this person is the new person. And I think that you have this also, that I think that, you were like the first Kaleb. And I don't think that necessarily that you were like a carbon copy of another person that we've seen before. And I think that Star was just an original. I don't think that there's been another Star.
I appreciate that. I got a couple monikers. I was called Walmart Wendell a couple times. And
no, but you're so different than Wendell.
Yeah, but I think Star is an original. I think I completely agree with that. I think it's also tough when you look at like, how many people are they going to cast from the same season as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like almost like where in her season is she in the pecking order more than she is like in the history of the show? Yeah. Do you see her as like a top 3 person most likely to come back?
From this season, I haven't really thought about who I would most like to see come back. But I think that, she would be such an interesting person to bring back, because I feel like that she is just such a wild card of, you don't know necessarily like how is she going to be in a new season. And I feel like you have so many people that are like super like strategy people, but I think that, in terms of like whatever category I put Star in terms of like more of like a wild card, like breath of fresh air, like I don't know if there's too many other people that I would put in that bucket. So I don't know, like in terms of like a Joe or a Eva to bring them back, it's like, I feel like I've kind of seen it.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that there's part of them in terms of like, you have people who maybe it's not necessarily like the personality, but it's their story of like, okay, where you end up like coming up just short, or, end up getting like totally screwed in a big way. And that's part of it. That's like, okay, well, I need to see like the next chapter of that story. But I feel like in terms of like, as far as the gameplay goes, I don't know if there's a ton of people that I'm saying that I definitely need to have come back.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. Sometimes
I think is another person who is would But these are people that are more. It's not so much like what they've done in terms of like this has not been a season of fluid gameplay. The gameplay has not been next level in Survivor 48. So that the characters that are popping are really popping.
Yeah, I agree. I think like I look at Kyle and Kamilla. I look at probably Mary, Say, and Star, and maybe like David, depending on your cup of tea as well, as kind of like all people who could be in that conversation.
And David also is somebody who does something a little bit different than what we've seen. Kyle and Kamilla, I think it depends on how their story plays out also.
Yeah. I feel sometimes it's like not your season. And I look at Kamilla and I don't know how many more of these rabbits she's going to pull. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, there's a lot there, even in tribal council, she's slinging it, you know what I mean? And she's kind of saying probably even a little bit more than she should, which is good for, the show and just kind of like, kind of standing on what you say as well. So, maybe it's my Canadian bias, but also, appreciate that,
Mm-hmm. So, okay. How about Thomas asks, is this the end of the I have to make a move meta? What do you think? I mean, that so much of Survivor, and look, I understand what it must be like for maybe the players or even the producers that people complain, oh my God, big move, itis. Everybody's just making a move just to make a move. Now players are not making a move and we're like, oh my, well, somebody, do you realize you have to make a move, right?
Yeah, I feel like I wonder if almost like Survivor is like cyclical, where it started off where the alliance was the dominant strategy. Then it was, okay, we have the alliances. Now somebody flips and that changes the whole game, right? And then it goes into voting blocks where everyone's making a move every single time. And I wonder if that cycle shortens, but if we see it again.
Well, I think what I could try to, like, I was going to, like, weave my way through the logic of that. Like, you have to make moves, and we want to see you make moves, but we need to understand the moves. Like, for instance, like, where it's like, hey, I have a number one ally. I have to vote them out tonight because the jury will respect that. And we're at home, we're like, but why? I don't know. Why are you doing that? Well, yes, you are making a move, but we don't understand the logic of this. But like, I feel like that now it's an overcorrection to say like, hey, I've been guaranteed top 6 at the final 8. I'm good. I don't need to make a move. Well, it's like, well, no, but you're not in a position to win.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like the cycles are going to be short, because you might watch 1 or 2 seasons that I think I would never put myself in that position to be the bottom of, a 6-person alliance, even though I can get to 6. I think, as long as they continue to cast people who are, super fans, there's always going to be this. But I also think that Survivor 48, part of the reason why the pre-merge was so electric was because of all like these characters who were getting eliminated in the first half of the game who probably would have been making some of these moves now.
Yeah.
Right?
It was such a good pre-merge.
Yeah.
It's one of the best.
Oh yeah. I mean, with Thomas, shout out another guy who wish he could come back, if the circumstances align, and some, poor
Kevin.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Justin, best pizza in Mass, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was great. Right.
Oh, great time. Met Jeremy Collins there. That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
Great. It was almost hard to get a word in because, you were just there, just telling him how good of a job he did at fantasy football.
Oh, well, like Jeremy is a longtime rival of mine in fantasy football. And he and I played in the championship this year. And he actually said that it was kind of messed up because I told him that my son, Dominic, who's 11, has been my secret weapon. And he was furious. And he said that that's cheating, that my son is helping me. Like I said, like with Joe and his sons are going to take over the business that with Kyle and Shauhin, that my son Dominic, he's way in the fantasy football weeds. And then he's like, Dad, you got to get this person. Dad, we got to get this person. I mean, I make the executive decision.
Of course. Yeah. You gave him like, you're like, nice. You gave him like a little like head nozzle, nozzle. You're like, nice job, champ. You did so good this year. Don't worry about it. So, it's bulletin board material, really. He should be thanking you because he's going to have to come back, stronger.
He's got like 7 teams. Like, he does, what is he, like, he loses to me in one league. He's fine.
Yeah, but big Jeremy fan. So it was, he was cool. And then, everyone else, I mean, these live events, you can't miss,
Yeah, I know we had a really good turnout at Luigi's Pizza. I appreciate Justin hosting us there. Kaleb, what else is going on in your world when you're not doing Survivor?
So I'm, working for the same company for the last almost 8 years, which is great because, you reach a level that you can, be able to take your eye off of just the work and be able to do all this other stuff. And something I love to do in the wintertime is to get out of Canada, which may shock nobody, right? Working remote. Right.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier about all the places that you travel to. Do you have a favorite destination?
Yeah, great question. I would say probably so I spent 2 months in Buenos Aires, which is great because of the conversion rate. It was so cheap. You get big steak, sides, like $6-7. That was awesome in 2022. Colombia, I've went a couple of times. And then from Europe, I'd probably be like Greece or Croatia. It's probably like the 2 most beautiful places that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Remote working. I don't know if there's any Survivor players who are fellow remote workers. I will be doing, I think, another stint this fall and winter, September through December, starting in Portugal at the end of September. So if somebody's looking to potentially try some remote working somewhere else, hit me on Instagram.
Okay, wait. So are you offering a job to people?
No. It's like you got to already be remote working already.
All right, but so you're basically saying that you want to go. Hey, does anybody want to go in on like some kind of Airbnb with me in Portugal where we're both remote working?
There's a lot of these nomad communities and groups, so you can get like into an apartment building where everybody's remote working or things like that. So there's like some of these structures set up. So if you're interested in just doing a trip on your own, I would say I'm doing this trip on my own right now. And,
do you care? What if somebody's like, hey, Kaleb, I would love to go to Portugal, but I'm not going to be working on the trip?
Okay, well, I've done this before. It's a little bit challenging. You're more than definitely take a vacation. I'll be with you like weekends, evenings, mornings.
Now, is this open to fans also, or only other players who are listening?
Let me start with players, right? Because I feel like I'd be, I get overstimulated online if I'm getting messages from all over the place,
Yes. Okay. So first wave is the Survivor alumni, and they do listen.
Yeah. Great place to start. I'm going to be doing that for about a month, and then I'll probably go to South America come November. So, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just throwing an open invite for any fellow remote workers.
What if multiple former players reach out to you? How will you make the decision of who gets to, or is it the more the merrier?
More the merrier. You know, I'm equal opportunity. In terms of the fact, it's not like we're getting one big house, It's like, I'll help you guys, if you've never done it before, can help with that. I always find on a lot of these trips, maybe not Portugal, that's kind of like a gluttonous one because I haven't really went away the last couple of years because of Survivor. But, if you go to Central America, South America, you save money compared to living at home with conversion rates and the,
That's a good point.
Down there.
Yes.
So I always end up saving a lot more money when I do these trips than I do living at home, for sure. And you get the sun, and it's way better than a Canadian winter.
Kaleb, let's say you got like 4 other Survivor alumni to go with you to Portugal to all do remote work. Okay. All right. And Rob as a podcast came with a substantial financial offer to put live feeds on the Airbnb. Are you taking the meeting with us?
Listen, as everybody in reality TV, we'll take the meeting.
Take the meeting. Okay, we'll talk to your people.
Yeah, we'll take the meeting. I mean, I'd want to know the house a little bit. I feel like there's some people where, some things are better left off the feeds. And then some people, we'll see. But actually, it's probably the former group the one that you want to get.
Yeah. Right? Okay. So, Kaleb, are you watching anything else fun right now?
Not a ton of other stuff right now. I've been watching some Criminal Minds lately.
Oh, yeah. You were telling me about that in Boston.
Yeah. So, never watched that series before. So getting into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still haven't caught up on Dondi, but
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So looking forward to that. And, it's fun catching up with the Traders Challenge, kind of like some of these other, shows that are coming out.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on your mind, Survivor or otherwise?
I think that, so I will say, I've heard some discourse about the Final Four fire making.
Yes.
Do we like it? Do we hate it? Where do you stand on the subject?
Well, I'm especially sour and down on it this week because I feel like that it has created this mess that we're in of 4 people willing to just ride it out to the end and not want to make a move.
Yes, but wouldn't things like this happen all the time before fire making? Like, are we just seeing something that we've already seen in other seasons?
Well, give me an example of it, because I feel like that, a lot of times I feel like that we would see alliances of 5, and inside the 5, there'd be sort of like 2 different groups thinking that they have a final 3, but there would still be a little bit of tension of like, who has the real final 3 when they end up coming down to it. Whereas that this group of 4 is just like, okay, well, we're just content to get to 4 because at least no matter what, I'm going to have a chance to try my hand in making the fire. And I know I can make a fire.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like we don't have to ever turn on each other. Worst comes to worst, 2 people in this 4 will be making fire. And whoever is the person that can't make the fire is out. Nobody had to get backstabbed in this 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a lot easier said than done. I think at the end of the day, like the bigger challenge with fire is that instead of taking people out at 4, you're now taking them out at 5, right? Or 5.
Well, who's doing that? Who's doing that?
You gotta catch the end of the season, my guy.
Mm-hmm.
Long over. But yeah, anyways, I just feel like, and maybe I'll do that research. Nothing comes to mind right now, but I feel like, don't we see almost like these pagongings or like some of these dominant tribes, like a Ghost Island or whatever, like groups can come together and ride it out to the end.
Well, I feel like in Ghost Island, I don't even know if they knew about the Final Four fire making at that point in time. I know it did come up in that season, or maybe that they might have found out about it at the beginning of the season. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise to them. I think that's what happened in the preseason. They told them, hey, when you get down to 4, it'll be the Final Four fire making. I think that was a tough spot. I mean, for Laurel especially, who thought that, like, Laurel was sort of saw a path where maybe if I get to the final 3 with Dom and Wendell, they'll split votes and I might be able to. But I think that for Laurel, I don't know if there was ever a perfect opportunity for her to make that flip.
Yeah, and then there's also an element, and you obviously always have to believe you have a chance to win the game. Mm-hmm. But I think of like Blood versus Water when Monica was going to the end. It's like, listen, if you flip, none of us win, right?
Yeah. And that was a tough season also because then somebody was coming back from the Redemption Island also. So, if Monica ends up flipping and now all of a sudden now another number from the other side comes back from Redemption Island at the final 5, now all of a sudden, okay, now that the other side has the number. So that was a tough season where Redemption Island really did prevent anybody from strongly considering to flip.
I will say, and I don't know if they'll do this because they always want the twist to be shown in the finale.
Sure.
Bring back at least a pre-merge Redemption Island.
That would be fun. If we had a pre-merge Redemption Island this season, who would complain?
I just think that there's so many, and everyone, we all love, they love to be purists, when it comes to Survivor, but, with all of the lost.
What's pure about Survivor these days?
Exactly, like everything is so kind of, like there's so many, crap rolls anyways that.
Right.
Why wouldn't we give these guys a chance to come back if you got a bad shake?
Especially because that we are doing so much crazy stuff in the pre-merge, losing votes. You went on a journey. You're basically screwed. And then
have conversations.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so it's like we could be like a little bit more loosey-goosey. It's like, okay, well, Justin, you got hosed, but, the good news is you could maybe, fight your way back in, and then we ended at the merge. Like, I would love that. I think that, like, why not?
Would be awesome. Yeah. So that would be my other, I don't have too many other Survivor hot takes, but I'm pro fire making, and I'm pro Redemption Island, definitely for the pre-merge. And if you wanted to tell me that they were going to do it a second wave that comes in, but it doesn't happen in the finale at Finals 5, it comes in sooner, I could be swayed to that as well.
Yeah, I think we also have to like double up on a tribal council in an episode also. So we have the split tribal council, but I think also like that mergatory episode is kind of like a dud also with, earn the merge. So somebody comes back from Redemption Island in that episode. And so that's a little bit of like excitement that comes in there. And then we probably have to have an episode where it's maybe not necessarily a split tribal council, but in 90 minutes, you could do 2 tribal councils in one episode. 100%. They used to do it in 60 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I don't know. Like the numbers, they can make the numbers work.
They can make the numbers work. Yeah. Anyway, and we've been lucky the last couple seasons, but maybe you get a medevac along the way. You don't even have to worry about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Knock on wood. All right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So. All right, Kaleb. This was so wonderful to get to catch up with you.
Oh, Rob.
Anything else you want to ask me?
Did you make Star freestyle in her exit interview?
So I did. She did rap a little bit. I didn't even have to prompt her.
What was her boot order?
So I said to Star, I thanked her for also that in doing a freestyle rap, I thanked her for not giving the boot order for the rest of the season in her rap. And I didn't know that was necessarily, when I started this thing, something that I needed to say to people, but I have learned that is helpful information to give.
It's important. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to know.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
If it's not explicit.
You can never be too safe. And and her rap was not explicit.
And then one other thought was, it just hit me now. So feels like RHAP Grams and the Survivor Instagram page have both taken a big jump up this season. You know, like are you like
in terms of our follower count or the level of our content?
Yeah, the level of the content, the comments, the memes.
I thought you were going to accuse us of buying followers.
Oh, no. Okay. You got no one won Survivor there, right?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Send Brandon.
And we have had, a lot of great work. Brandon Donlin has been, hard at work. Also, we're also always bringing in more talent to try to help us get better and better. So thank you for noticing.
Yeah, no, I almost feel like, you just make sure you can't be behind the Survivor Instagram page. They're like notoriously, not as funny. Like if they're going to be funny, you have to be 7 times as funny. Like you guys might even have to step it up further.
They're on our ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, if you have any things to help me brainstorm a workshop, please let me know.
We'll start with Portugal and then we'll figure it out from there.
All right. Yeah. Kaleb, what do you want to tell people to check out? You still have the Cameo?
Still got Cameo, but you also just on Instagram, and outside of that, I like to just appear here and there at, live events, especially if I'm working and I'm down in the States already. I always try and rip over. So it'll be fun to see you guys, at some of these things in the future as well.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you again in person soon. Thank you, everybody, for checking this out. We love to read your comments. I think they'll be all positive, right?
Sure. Right. Haven't seen a negative comment yet.
No, I don't think we gave people things to have a negative comment. But if you keep it constructive, we'll allow it. Okay. And then, of course, I will have the Wand Off coming up on Monday. So be sure to join us for that very special treat. Marianne Oketch, your friend and mine, is going to fill in for me on the patron Q&A on Friday. So be on the lookout for that, patrons. robhasawebsite.com/patron. Thank you for joining us, Kaleb. Take care of a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.